was the middle of the civil rights movement, the mid-60s. It's a very violent, very scary time. My little record about a black boy and a white girl came out into the middle of it and really became a lightning rod. A radio station in Atlanta, Georgia was burned to the ground for playing it. People at the Boston Globe newspaper were fired for quoting from it. I got a lot of death threats. And I did what you do when you're a teenager faced with something you can't understand. I ignored it. So it was, I found myself on a stage in Encino, California, all of 15 years old, sold-out house, singing my little hit song. And I heard a commotion coming from the audience over here. And of course, being a performer, I assumed they were talking about how fabulous I was. So I thanked them and went on. The commotion got louder and louder, until finally I stepped back from the microphone to try and see what was going on. And as I stepped back, a figure detached itself from the rest, and he stood up, and he put his hand around his mouth, and he yelled out, "Hey, nigger lover, go home!" I didn't know what to do, so I went back to the microphone and started to sing. And the people around him took up the chant, until pretty soon they were in time with the song. Nigger lover, beep, beep, beep. Nigger lover, beep, beep, beep. Till I finally started to cry. I didn't want them to see me cry, so I put the guitar down and I walked off the stage with as much dignity as I could find, and then I ran for the ladies' room, and that's where the promoter found me a few minutes later, bent over the sink crying my eyes out. Well, he'd been in the box office. He had no idea what was going on. So he said, "What are you doing off stage? The show's not over." And I tried to explain, and he said again, "What are you doing off stage? The show isn't over." I said, "They were calling me nigger lover." He said, "You left the stage because someone called you a name? Well, you've got to go back." It had not even crossed my mind. This was the 60s. People were disappearing. I was not going back, and I told him so. We argued. And then he said the one thing that could make me go back, he said, "I cannot believe the girl who wrote that song is a coward." I'm Jewish. I was raised on stories of the Maccabees. And I was taught from the time I remember that if I didn't do for others, there would be no one to do for me. And I knew the minute he said it that if I didn't go back, I couldn't face my family. So I said something stupidly brave and noble, like, "Tell my brother I love him." And I went back on stage, and of course, the minute I got back up there, the shouting began again. But now I was angry. Now I thought, well, I'm staying. And so I kept singing, and I watched as the most astonishing thing happened. The people in the rows behind them reached up and grabbed them by the shoulders and forced them into their seats. And then all the little 16-year-old ushers came down the aisle and shone their flashlights in these folks' faces, and suddenly they weren't quite so loud. By the time the manager came and threw them out, I was watching. And they didn't walk out. They slunk like cowards. And my father loved Woody Guthrie, the great American troubadour. And we had a picture of Woody hanging on the refrigerator. And around the sound hole of his guitar, he'd written in magic marker, "This machine kills fascists." I always thought that was kind of funny. It wasn't until that night that I understood the power of a song as I watched my little 3.5-minute piece turn a bunch of 16-year-old ushers into heroes and show up a bunch of bullies for the cowards that they were. You come to my door, baby, face was clean and shining black as night. My mama went to answer, you know, that you looked so fine. Now I could understand the tears and the shame. She called you boy instead of your name, when she wouldn't let you inside. When she turned and said, but honey, he's not our kind. She said, I can't see you anymore, baby. Can't see you anymore. Walking down to school, baby, everybody's acting deaf and blind, until they turn and say, why don't you just stick to your own